So hi everyone, I'm here with Katya Mazii, and
Hi.
she is from Ukraine. And I wanted to give her a chance to tell her story so that at least our interior design family could know about what's going on over there. And so, Katya, why don't you just tell us first where you're from?
Hi, everyone. I am from Ukraine, from Kiev. Originally, that's where I was born and raised, lived most of my life. I moved to America. Um, let's say I was 30 when I moved to America. Let's put it this way. So for 30 years, I still think my home is Kiev, Ukraine. I have two homes now, America and there. And this is where I'm from. I identify Ukrainian 100%. I speak Ukrainian language, Russian language. My choice of language was Russian because of the surrounding, but we are in Ukraine, we're bilingual. It depends where from in Ukraine people are. Typically, West speaks solely Ukrainian, East speaks solely Russian, Middle speaks both and mixed. I'm from the middle, I'm from Kiev, that's the capital. I speak both.
So, do you have a big family, and are they mostly in Ukraine now, or some here in the States?
Well, unfortunately, no. My Ukraine is not. Sorry, my family is not that big, but I do have close relatives there. In Kiev, most of my close people are in Kiev. I have friends all over Ukraine, relatives. Um, Kiev and two more towns. One is a little northwest from Kiev, and one is south inland, little villages in central Ukraine.
So, can you tell us a little bit about what the relationship between Ukraine and Russia was before all of this happened?
Of course. So there is a prehistory. It depends who you ask, but historical facts are historical facts. Ukraine was a separate nation with separate language, with separate even religion um, used to be different. We were west of Ukraine is Catholic, but when Soviet Union formed, when Russian Empire collapsed, Soviet Union formed, and a lot of adjacent countries were a part of the Soviet Union. I'm not going to go too much into history because that's going to take too much time, but Second World War, basically after the Second World War, the borders were formed the way were formed, and Ukrainian Republic, it was referred to, was formed with the borders that exist now. Well, not now, not for the past 8 years, but the map that everybody could Google and see what Ukraine is, that was formed past World War II. And then when we got our independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, when the Soviet Union all collapsed, we got our borders, the ones that you can see on any map right now. And it was like that up until 2013. We had, Ukraine is the democratic country. Since we got the independence, we have been a democracy. We had elections, we had elected presidents, elected officials, everything. And some of choices were not that great, some of choices were better. But that's what democracy is, right? And we love it. We love democracy. We had two revolutions since democracy. And the first revolution, that's where actually what the pre-story is for the situation that is happening right now. We had, it was a pre-election time, and we had two opponents, presidential opponents. One was pro-Western, pro-European, pro-democracy, and one was, I don't know how to name him, but in one short word, pro-Russian, period. He was interested in, he was very corrupt. It's embarrassment to our country. And honestly, he later on, he became a president. And I think it's an embarrassment of a president a president who was in jail for twice and was 3 times justice served him not well. Let's put it this way. I mean, he was a criminal. He was a criminal 3 times tried, and twice he was in jail, like real term in jail. So in 2004-3, we had elections, and the pro-Western side won. There was a lot of demonstration because the election was rigged at the time, was a lot of evidence of being rigged, and because we are a democratic country and we want people to hear what they have to say, everybody was going on main squares and protesting. And the pro-Russian side was supported by Putin, obviously, and of course, and he was actually preparing for celebrating the other side, but because everyone went and protested, that didn't happen. So fast forward a few years, another election 4 years later, that pro-Russian candidate ran again, and don't ask me how, but he became a president. There were elections, the country was divided. The reason I mentioned language is actually a very divisive tool for autocracy, for rule of government, like in Russia. There's one big tool: divide and conquer. That's what they do. So they divided our country on the base of language, saying that Russian speakers are being, I don't know, discriminated by Ukrainians, which is not true. That was a narrative that was created that had no evidence whatsoever by no one. There is no evidence that Russian speakers were ever discriminated by Ukrainian speakers. It's just not true. But that was the narrative that was told to Russian population. Fast forward a little more. Our embarrassment of a president, who I mentioned before, his name was Yanukovych, who got elected by us somehow again, was leading to believe that he is interested in leading us to Europe, that he wants us to be a European country with European relationships, with European standards, beliefs, and so on and so forth. And one, I guess, month, November of 2013, he went to Europe with intentions to sign an association of integration of Ukraine into the European Union. It would have been a long time, still a long, very long term for Ukraine to actually become European Union, but that would have been a first step. However, something happened while he was there, who knows what, and when he came back, he said, I haven't signed anything, nothing's going to be signed. We are going towards I think it was trade union or something that Russia was forming, and we're going to head that way. All of the young generation was absolutely outraged about that statement, and they went out to protest. And in the main square, Maidan in Kiev, and they were violently taken out of there, basically beaten up, arrested, all of the things that are happening right now in Russia. So that created a bigger outrage from people, and more people came out to protest, and it created more resistance from the government, and it was the whole mess. It was a civil war in the center of the democratic Kiev. We lost lives. There's 100, it's called Nebesna Sotnya in Ukrainian. And while we were having our problems, Mr. I don't want to call him Mr. actually, the Russian president took our part of our Soviet country, Crimea, by putting unidentified soldiers in there and without any shed of blood, which is true, without any blood, without anything, took over the government of Crimea and put his puppets in government, and they, within 2 or 3 weeks, they performed so-called referendum with one question: do you want to be in part of Russia? And it was rigged, obviously. 3 weeks, you don't do referendums in 2 or 3 weeks. And he annexed Crimea. None of the world has accepted this annexation. Crimea is a Krakozia. You know, there was a movie back in 2000, early 2000s about a man who left to America, and while he was in the sky, his country was a coup. But it's not the type of the story. So it's not recognized anywhere but Russia, and they live under Russia. And we've been talking about it with the international community in the political arena and everywhere, that it's not unacceptable. While that was happening in Crimea, the Donetsk Donbass region was also decided to protest, saying that they want an independence and they want to be Russia, and they want not to be part of Ukraine, which was absolutely also orchestrated by Russia and Putin. They helped those rebels, separatists, with weapons, and they started also fighting Ukrainian forces who were trying to fight them in order to claim the independence, that they are independent state, which is unacceptable. Meaning, it's the sovereignty of a country. It's not acceptable. Like just fighting and taking over, that's not how democracy works, how anything actually works. The only way to get separation from any union, country, or anything has to be through the votes of the people. And it has to be done, like, example would be Brexit. Brexit is a great example. 2 years they were talking about plans of leaving European Union. Experts were talking about it. People were talking about it, had time to think, weigh all the options. That's a proper way to, the right or wrong decision, that's not up to us or me to decide, but this is the process that has to be. So long story short, 8 years later, the conflict is on. Ukrainian forces are fighting off the separatists and Russian forces that are on the Ukrainian land. Putin had enough of it, I guess. I don't know what it is, what's happening inside of that crazy man's head. And February 22nd, he decided to proclaim those territories as independence. Therefore, according to Russian law, he could put his military forces on the ground of Ukraine, which he did, but he didn't do just that. The night after, at 5 a.m., just like Hitler did, he commanded entire force on Ukrainian territory, on Ukrainian strategic military parts. Ukraine was bombed at 5 a.m. across the country. All of my family and relatives woke up to bombing, to bombing. That's the scariest sight there is. Russian narrative is that Ukrainian government is drug addict Nazis who are discriminating Russian-speaking people, and Russia is coming in to save them. I don't know, everybody probably saw the news on all over the place. His big speech, how Ukraine was formed by Soviet Union. It's all made up facts, but we're going to get into it in a minute of how the information works in Russia. It's amazing, actually. saying that they're gonna just demilitarize Ukraine and denazify Ukraine with bombing only strategic points, and no civilians will be shed. 8 days later, I can say it's absolute false. It's the devastation that is happening right now in Ukraine is beyond comprehension. It's beyond understanding that it's happening to a peaceful country who's never been fighting anybody, who does not have resources to be having fights. We don't have nuclear weapon. We don't have weapon. We don't fight with neutral territory that was. So there's a lot of suffering right now. A lot of people fleeing the country. But besides fleeing the country, women and children are fleeing the country. It also has united us like never before. Every man alive is ready to fight until the last drop. We do not want Russians there. We didn't ask them to save us, as Putin said, and it's our territory that we're going to fight. We are seeking for any help West can give us to protect our democracy and our country. Unfortunately,
in your opinion, what do you think Putin really wants from Ukraine?
That's a $1 billion, not $1 billion, well, billion lives kind of price of question. From what I can gather, my personal opinion, he is living in a delusion that was put in his mind back in his youth, when he was in his 20s, when he decided to be a KGB agent and serve the great Soviet Union and protect Soviet Union. I don't know everything. He lived in Germany when Soviet Union collapsed. He was a spy in Germany, so he was a spy disconnected from anything what was happening in Russia and Soviet Union at the time. So he missed completely all of the perestroika, all of the Gorbachev's desire to bring some kind of democracy into a communist state. So when he came back to Russia in 1991, right after it collapsed, he was absolutely devastated that the great country that he sworn to does not exist anymore. He had his political road, which wasn't really long. Before he became prime minister and president, it's a mystery how did it happen, but because corruption in Russia and the mafia way of dealing, I don't know how it happened, but he became a president, and he pledged to restore the great Russian Empire and Soviet Union. Who knows? And now, after my emotions have calmed down, I had before the conflict started, before the war, not that, let's not call it conflict, it's the war. Before war started, I had watched a lot of information about Putin himself and was his persona and the history of Russian invasion all over the world. It makes sense now. Everything makes sense to support his distorted idea and distorted plan to restore Russian empire by conquering territories around and getting allies all over the world, like allies like Assad from Syria, allies like from Venezuela or others. This has been master plan all along, based on a distorted idea that West is after Russia, that West is the sole purpose of existence of West and existence of democracy is to destroy Russia, and his sole purpose is to protect Russia from that, from America, from Europe, So if you look at the map, Ukraine is strategically very important territory. If you think in terms of war, 19th century and back, right?
You're like the gateway to the western side of Europe, right?
Exactly. So we kept our neutral status. There was agreement in 1990s when we got our independence that we given up. We were the third largest nuclear power country in the world. We gave up our neutral weapons in agreement by pressure, by American pressure and by the Soviet Union or Russian pressure, that we would keep neutrality. We would not take sides and we would not be fighting anywhere, which put us in vulnerable position. So yeah, why I started the story with 2003 and 4 Orange Revolution, because the pro-Ukrainian president who was looking west was saying, triggering for Putin things like he wants to restore our president, that he became Yushchenko was the president. He wanted to go west and he wanted to be part of NATO because of a threat that could be coming from anywhere. Keeping the neutrality is being exposed. So being in NATO is being protected from who knows, and who knows has come today. So that triggered Putin, and his idea of having us as part of NATO is absolutely in no way acceptable, because he does not see NATO alliance as defense mechanism. He says it as offense mechanism only. So just because we are part of NATO, in his head, we are going to attack him, period. That's what his distorted, sick idea is, and that's why he is so opposed to having NATO and so close to his border, period. And so we have a conflict based on that ground, and now we're suffering the consequence of sick mind.
How are your relatives?
So most of my relatives are in Kiev, and Kiev is the capital. That is the target number one for Putin to put his Muppet. So his idea right now is to control Ukraine, to put his Muppet government there, who would be pro-Russian, no NATO, no European Union, and so forth, so on and so forth. So Kiev is being protected very much. So thank God. The worst, I mean, I don't know about the worst. I hope the worst is behind. But Kiev is heavily protected, heavily armed. Every man was given a rifle. Every man was given a rifle. Every woman is trying to help how they can. There are blog posts. I'm not supposed to be telling a lot of details, but let's say it's secure. Kiev right now is secure. It was bombed in the first 3 days. Heavily bombed. All the outskirts are damaged. All of the outskirts are damaged. The strategic hitting is they hit all the military bases. Then they are destroying communication, water supply, heating supply. I
heard today that they took over the nuclear power plant that was there. It's there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is, that's mind-boggling of irrational of the whole situation. Nuclear anything, nuclear explosion of a plant or nuclear bomb, God forbid. There's going to be no winners. Nobody wins from that. I don't understand this whole situation. Honestly, when we come from the ground of nuclear, I don't agree, but I understand the desire to fight with how they're fighting and get a territory, and the political games are political games. And but when it comes to destruction of that level, I'm speechless. If that plant explodes, Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, all of the Middle East, basically, all of the East and West Europe, all of the North Europe, and all of European Russia is done. Poisoned for decades. Chernobyl, 10 times bigger.
Yeah.
Chernobyl affected many countries in Europe, and that was an accident. It was an honest accident. This is a deliberate attack on human lives. I'm beyond. I'm done with tears. It's an 9 days in. Today's the 9th day since the fighting started. I don't have any more tears. I'm in anger stage. I'm absolutely furious and enraged.
Well, let me ask you what you think. So far, the world response has been to cut economic ties and sanctions with Russia. Do you think that that's enough, or do you think that there needs to be more?
Oh, it has to be more. It must be more. Sanctions are. It's a great trigger. It's a great trigger to try to influence the government from inside. But it's an attempt. It's no more than an attempt. It's not going to work. It's not going to, meaning it's going to work in the way Russia is going to be isolated from the world. And they are going to go back to Soviet Union, period. They're going to be 1960s, back into Cold War, in the midst of Cold War. The closest ally will be North Korea.
What I'm worried about is that I think Putin planned that he was going to be sanctioned. So he had already set up the economy that it would be, independent of all help from the rest of the world anyway. So
and this is a scary part. This is a frightening and scary part, that it has been a plan all along. There has been a plan all along. What is mind-boggling right now? Everything is mind-boggling right now, but I'm a Russian speaker. I do not have many friends in Russia. I have some. The information in their heads and the idea in their heads aligns with Putin. It's in parallel. The propaganda machine, amazing, beyond amazing. It's impossible to talk to Russians right now saying it's a war happening. It's not a special military operation happening, and only no civilians are being hurt. They don't want to hear it. Putin did everything right. You're going to be sanctioned. It's okay. Russia will survive. Russia will survive. It will survive. That's exactly what it is. It's going to be surviving. It's not going to be living. It's going to be surviving, and they're fine with it. Let them be. But yeah, it's been a plan. And the one interesting thing that describes actually Putin and Russia, the country that they have been a Soviet Union for 8, 9, 10, for a century now. Actually, it started in exactly a century, 100 years ago. Soviet Union started. Free and democratic world is a very, very, very foreign concept to them. Thinking that things do not go according to somebody's plan. It's what do you mean it's not somebody's plan? What do you mean it's just a free world? What do you mean elections? What do you mean you can protest and have have your rights preserved, heard, have rights, you know? It's a very foreign idea for them, absolutely foreign. And it's surfacing, unfortunately, in the cost of Ukrainian lives. I mean, I'm in a sick way. I don't want to say things that, but because of this war right now, all of that is being surfaced. How twisted that understanding of the world runs by somebody's plan, only one plan to conquer, plan to rule. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I
So another billion-dollar question: do you think that this might be the start of another world war?
hope not. I really, really, really hope not, because as I said earlier, there's going to be no winners. There will be no winners. I totally understand and completely understand the NATO's desire not to get involved, because if they get involved, that's World War III. But I think right now it's imminent. I'm going to use the word that President Biden used. It might happen later, but if Putin is not stopped right now, he'll do it again with a different country, and he'll go further and further and further. And if they ally with China, for example, I don't know what China's. I know nothing about China's politics, but if Putin's plan is to conquer the world, he's gonna do it, and he's gonna get allies to do it, one or another way. And his methods are brutal. His tactics are ruthless. He will prevail if he's not stopped. That's my opinion. It's not optimistic. I am optimist, but before this invasion, I didn't think that wars are even an option anymore. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just
people still think like that, right?
Yeah. I hope not, but I hope he's terminally ill and he has some kind of psychological sickness that will last for a year or two, and then he just dies and problem dies. But otherwise, I don't know what needs to be done. I don't know what needs to be done. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating, and it's surreal. It's peaceful country is being torn apart by a dictator.
So they haven't broken down though your lines of communication with your family? You can still.
No, not yet.
Okay.
No, not yet. I shouldn't say yet. Not. We have communication. We have internet. We have phone, everything. I'm not sure what Starlink is, but Elon Musk already sent that on the day 2, I believe. Day 2 or 3. Yeah, he started the satellites for Starlink to work in Ukraine. So we're gonna have connection. What amazing thing I want to say thank you for doing this interview. And I am shocked in the best way possible how much of support Ukraine has from all over the world. This is a sign that the world understands that the dictatorship and just intrusion like that is absolutely not acceptable.
Right.
And we are supported, that our ideas and understanding is shared across the globe. So anyone who's watching this, if you in any way have supported Ukraine, thank you from the bottom of my heart and all of my fellow Ukrainians. Thank you.
Do you want to talk about this organization that you told me about, that you gave me the link to, the Ukrainian-American Coordinating Council? You know them?
I didn't know them before this conflict, before this war, unfortunately, but I did browse them. They do it's a big community. They have headquarters in California, and they help Ukrainian community a lot. Unfortunately, that's all I know at this point.
Okay, so for everybody that's watching this, in the link, I'm sorry, in the description of this video, I'll put a link to this organization that we're talking about. So if anybody wants to donate anything, you can do it there. But otherwise, I really want to thank you, Katya, for giving this talk and really opening our eyes on what the real experience is like to be there in Ukraine, not just to watch it on CNN or all the other news shows, but the first.
This experience watching, it happened to me in 2013. I was not in Ukraine. 2014 as well. I wasn't in Ukraine at the time. I was working abroad, watching my city center being destroyed and broadcasted on BBC, CNN, and any other news outlet was shocking. And today, now seeing my neighborhood, the video with the tank running over the car, have you seen that?
No.
That's in my neighborhood. That's in my neighborhood. I am 10-minute walk from there. My house, my home, my relatives, everything is 10 minutes from there. Walk. I mean, it's been 9 days. My mind has already kind of sponged it in. I accepted it, that it's happening. But yeah, let's see, there's more to come. I believe right now there's a hybrid war happening besides the active shooting, which is devastating to beyond understanding. But the informational war that Russia is playing, they lie bluntly in every interview, from every screen. They lie, saying that they are free in Ukraine. How is it possible? And it's been unpunished. Lies like that. The whole Russia, whole of the population does not want to hear. Not all, I shouldn't be saying that all, but like big portion of Russia who was watching Russian TV, justifying this.
Well, that's the tactic of every dictator, is that in order for you to pull your nation together, you have to make an enemy out of the other side. So they make up all this propaganda to force people to change their views about what Ukrainian people are like. It's terrible.
It's terrible, and the lesson learned needs to be learned. I think we are in America right now, and with all the events that have been happening in America, I want to urge everyone to double check all of the information that goes into their ears. Do not have one source. Do not have two sources. Have 4 sources. That's the best. Always question what you're being told. Always. Because the result of it can be just is irreversible and damaging to anything. Look what happened in January 6th in the United States. That's result of propaganda. Whichever side you're on, doesn't matter which side you're on. That side, one side, one attempted to cause damage because of false propaganda information that was going into their ears. So one message I want to bring to the world is question your sources.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for letting me share this story, this information. I hope it's being spread.
Thank you.